Hi. Musings on multiculturalism. Let's look at the human. We all have the very basic primitive needs to breathe, to drink water, to get food, to be with other people. Some people think this is enough for multiculturalism to work. But on top of this, we have different coloured skin. We have different physical size. These are differences, and we should be able to overlook them, but we can't. We tend to like people that are like us. They look like us. We can say they're one of us. Someone who's got different features in the face, different coloured skin, different height, and kind of a different frame. It's not totally different, but is distinctly different. Some Africans are very tall. Pygmies are very short. These differences shouldn't matter, but they do. Now, when we talk about height, some things are programmed into people. For instance, women like men that are taller. It seemed almost programmed genetically, and men don't like a woman that's taller than them because height signifies power, protection, all those kinds of things. Now, these are factors in the mix that come into being with other changes. Now, on top of physical differences, or in addition to physical differences, we have different temperaments. Some children from day one are more energetic, more happy, more curious. It's hard to exactly define temperament, but clearly there are people, no matter what happens to them, they're optimistic that the future will be better. And there are other people, one bad thing has to be on the horizon only, and they're depressed, and they think that's what life's going to be forever. So we have different temperaments, even within the one family, let alone within the one society. Now, on top of temperament, you have personality. Personality, to some extent, is moulded by your environment, the people around you, the nature of the landscape. Some people would say Russians don't smile much because the weather's so bad. So culture is a difference amongst people, and culture reflects art, literature, and all kinds of other things. So cultural differences, as in multiculture or multiculturalism, are major factors. Of course, language is a culture. So just to summarize, cultural differences include a lot of things. Include language, include what's important, include art styles and music styles, literature, poetry. Culture is what distinguishes essentially animals from humans. though you could say some animals have culture in that they have language of a kind. So let's just explore why multiculturalism has a problem, and it's to do with the culture. If you're with someone and they've even got the same temperament and the same kind of personality as you have, that's good. There's a kind of simpatico. But when it comes to culture, which is way beyond just genetics, that's where differences occur. So, when someone doesn't know your history or the history of your country, that's a barrier. When someone doesn't know your language very well, but just basically, that's a barrier. When someone doesn't know conversational practices, although these will overlap with most cultures, that's a problem. In some cultures, you have to refuse an offer 3 times, although you really want to take up the offer. That's not the case in Australian culture. It used to be the culture that men, except the very crudest of men, didn't swear in women's company. But that culture has changed. It's still probably not a good idea to swear in women's culture, but some women swear like sailors anyhow. Now, other differences besides language, history, are interests. Some people are passionate about Australian rules football. I know very little about it. So there's a gap there between me and people from Melbourne and other parts of Australia. If you don't understand people's hobbies and pastimes and sports, that's also a barrier. And of course, a big barrier is religion, especially where the religions are opposed to one another. Now, here's the situation. When you bring people into a country, already there are possible differences. If you bring English people into Australia, because Anglo is still the main culture, there's not as many differences. You have differences in accent, differences in temperament, but you have the same language. There could be differences in education level too. And differences in occupation, there are also other ones. But there's a commonality there. There's also a commonality with Europe, which has been Christian, as opposed to other religions. Even though there are various denominations, there's still a common core, although sometimes the core is not very, let's say, the cores of various sects aren't very much in common. I haven't put that too well, but I think you get the point. So when you bring people in from other countries that look different, have different skin colour, different facial features in particular, when they have different hobbies and interests, different language, different types of relationships between the sexes, as in Islamic culture, and you have religions that are in opposition to the main religion of the country, and you have, as I've said, language differences. Then mixing is difficult, and it's hard to get the country unified. Younger people can adapt better than older people for the most part, though there are some older people that adapt very well. I've got an 87-year-old friend, and although he's got a heavy accent, his command of English is pretty good, but it is a very strong accent. But he has integrated into Australia after coming here in his late 40s. So when people say multiculturalism is our strength, diversity is our strength, that's a very, very debatable issue, especially when you get down to specifics, as I have earlier on. Let's look at some metaphors. When you have a family where one child is Hindu, another one is Catholic, another one is Islamic, and another one is Hindu, and another one is an atheist, that family is going to find it hard to be unified, particularly if people hold their views very strongly. Diversity is going to be disintegration or fragmentation. So this idea of diversity being good is quite debatable, especially when you get down to specific examples. Where diversity can be good is if people talk about ideas, their concepts of their culture, particularly at a philosophical level. But it can be at lower levels like cooking techniques. Now, as well as people must be prepared to listen and be open-minded, and not too many people are like that. Too many people are rusted onto ideas by the time they're 21 or much earlier, and they don't want to change. Most people aren't completely open to new ideas, and this doesn't mean they haven't got a critical brain. So diversity can lead to disintegration, fragmentation, and society lacking a backbone, a spine. And that's not good for the country. In Australia, Pauline Hanson is called a racist. She's not, in my opinion. She just wants a backbone for the country. There's no one culture that's better than others, although some are more appropriate, and I suppose you'd say more suited to the modern world. Now, that particular viewpoint is debatable. Some people would say Islam, with its medieval roots, 600s, 700s, is the best form, even though the culture that people want to implement is 1400 years old. Others would say, no, that's of a different time and it's no longer appropriate. This gets into the question of eternal truths and changing truths, or changing habits according to conditions. So I feel every culture needs a very strong backbone, but it has to also have an openness to change and to new ideas from any culture. Quality education at schools and universities and colleges can help in this way. But at the present time, we have a crisis in Australian education because this diversity is not practiced at universities. People are told to be green, socialist, and be completely tolerant where others are not tolerant. We have the idea that we shouldn't be racist, but it's okay to be racist towards white people, particularly white males. The universities in the humanities department, teaching, education, journalism, are dominated by women pushing, as I said, a green, Marxist, feminist, postmodern line of thought. Activist, and they're not able to look at other forms such as conservatism, traditional fuels, and the other thing is you don't get an education in engineering, dentistry or medicine. You get technical training. You don't become a better citizen as a result of studying those subjects. The intelligence required to master dentistry or medicine is not the same intelligence. You need to be a good citizen, a good parent, a politician. Things don't carry over. People think they do, but they don't carry over very much. Of course, if you've had scientific training, you think more scientifically. But it doesn't matter how much scientific training I have. If I have no training in chemistry, that scientific training isn't going to help me make good decisions in relation to chemistry. I just haven't got the knowledge, the experience. So to say diversity is our strength is just a meaningless phrase. Thank you.